Morning, all. We'll now begin our session. I'd like to thank all of you who are here in person and those of you who are online. I suspect we have a good crowd online. I don't actually have the count yet. 50? Yeah, about 50 people are online here and probably about 25 or 30 here in the room with us today. So this is the start of the expert group on resource management 13 session. And before we get started with the substance of the meeting, I'd like to pass over to Charlotte, who will deal with some housekeeping issues.
Oh, no. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I should say good afternoon and good evening as well to those that are joining us online. So as the chair has just said, this is the rescheduled meeting of the 13th session of the expert group on resource management. My name is Charlotte Griffiths. I'm the secretary of the expert group on resource management, and I'm supported here on the podium by my colleague Harry Tulsidus, who's our technical advisor for our work on UNFC and UNRMS, by Slavko Solar, who's sitting over to the left, and he's really our chief expert who's helping to deploy UNFC and in Europe, but not only. And then also supported by our fabulous interns, Duancha Su and Stephen Lagar, who's on the podium here, as well for IT by Yelena Torbicha and Laurence Rotter. So we've got a fantastic team here to support you. And this is an enormous amount of work that we're doing as part of the expert group on resource management. So without further ado, just some short housekeeping remarks. So this event is being recorded. So Harry, this isn't the right version of the, okay. So speakers and presenters. So if you're on Zoom, please do raise your hand when it's your turn to speak, and you will be unmuted. Use the chat function for comments, any comments that you have, and we'll share that with you. And then during the Q&A sessions that we'll have throughout the day, please do raise your hand if you wish to speak. I wanted to say that all the documents for this session have been posted online. We do have posted the draft version of the meeting report. It's available if you go to the link that's on the screen. If you go down to the documents tab, you will see the draft meeting report, and that includes all the draft conclusions and recommendations. And the goal is to have approval for the meeting report before the end of the day. The presentations will be posted subject to the approval of the presenters. This is a short meeting. The session times are from 10 to midday today, Geneva time, and then from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock this afternoon, Geneva time. If you're in the meeting room, we do need to wear masks. So thank you very much for your understanding on that point. So thank you very much. I look forward to this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. We do want to start with a bit of a somber moment. Is that many of you will have known Jen McCoy, who was vice chair of the EGRM. She's also a senior manager in energy at UNECE. Sadly, she's passed away just this past Friday. She had actually intended to be here and give some presentations. She was a senior manager for energy at EY and a member of at EGRM since 2017 and on the bureau since 2021. Jen was really bright, energetic, a fun woman to work with. I worked with her personally in her role at EY as well, so we got to know her very well over the years. She was really committed to her work. She was a passionate individual about energy and helping the world to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Additionally, she was a keen flag bearer for the issues around women in management, women in the extractive industries, and energy industries, and she had a real passion for helping those younger than ourselves and for those who were building their future within our industries. I think everyone here who had an opportunity to work with her would say that she was, as I said, she was a pleasure to work with, and we will all miss her tremendously. She's a great loss for the EGRM and for the Bureau. And just like to take a moment of silence to remember Jen, if we might here. Stand up. Thank you very much. To get started here, we need to adopt the agenda, which is agenda item 1. I'd like to request adoption of the revised annotated provisional agenda for the 13th session. Do we have any objections to that? No. Okay, well then we'll take that as adopted. The opening remarks will be taken under this agenda item 1, and the update on the activities and priorities of the Committee on Sustainable Energy and matters for consideration by the expert group on resource management will be taken under agenda item 7, other business. Denise will give that in a few moments for us. And in terms of the conclusions and recommendations during the day, we'll take all the conclusions and recommendations from this morning's session at the end of the session. And again, we'll do the same for the afternoon. So we won't break up each of the individual presentations during the day. So now I'd like to hand over to Daria Laguti, who's the new director of the Sustainable Energy Division, and many of you will not have had the opportunity to meet him yet. So I'd like to pass over to him for your opening remarks. Daria.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. And good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all of you. I'm very happy being here, and I know that this expert group has been doing a lot of work. It is actually a very important thematic. I know the European Union, the African Union has taken up the recommendations, this expert group, and we're looking forward to many other countries adopting these the recommendations and working with us closely on this item, which all of you know, of course, is of fundamental importance. I just wanted to recall last Monday, a week ago, we had a climate forum here especially focused on critical raw materials, which is one part, of course, of the work that you do in general terms when it comes to framework classification of natural resources and fuels and other items. And it is clear that there is no transition without critical raw materials. And the countries and the projects and all the participants to the forum highlighted this very important item. However, in order to have a future which looks different from our past, I think the work that this group is doing is of fundamental importance. I think we cannot obviously repeat the errors that we did in the past. We need to project a new future, and therefore all considerations about environmental and social considerations, as well as financial and economic considerations when looking at extractive industries and critical raw materials, is of fundamental importance to accompany a transition which is just for everybody. Otherwise, it would be rejected by the member states, by the people, by all of us. So I think it is crucial, the work that has been done here. It has international resonance. We have international centers for resource management in Mexico and in the Russian Federation. I think we need more. I think we need to continue working on this. It is, as I said, it's very important that all these the work that you do here and the approach, the methodology that is being developed and is being diffused gets as much visibility, as much resonance as possible. And particularly, if I may, I like the approach of the inbox thinking as opposed to the outdoor. Everybody, I'm coming as well from the private sector, and everybody, when you have a problem, try to think out of the box. Well, here is actually thinking in the box, and I like the colorful boxes that we have in the framework on classification in UNFSC. And I think that is the right way to go, because this is exactly what we need when looking at the issues that we are confronting. So therefore, I am very happy being here. I wish the meeting good success. I'm ready to learn a lot from you, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of you personally. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much, Dario, for those words. And as I said, I'm sure we'll all be looking forward to meeting and chatting with you during the time of the meeting here. Sadly, as short as it is here. So just for a couple of short opening remarks here, of course, as said, glad to have all of you here. This is a very different meeting than we've had in the past for our sessions. Of course, it's been postponed since our normal end of April, early May timeframe, and reduced from our normal week-long session to just two 2-hour sessions. We're not going to be able to go into much depth in detail on any of the issues that are covered today. This is mostly an opportunity for us to share the progress that we've made on a number of key issues. The work of the EGRM, I think, is sort of at a critical stage. I think there's kind of three main things that we're focusing on right now within the group. The first is really about adoption and use of the UNFC. And we're seeing that taking up around the world now. We're at a stage where the UNFC has enough development that we're at a stage where it's really ready to apply and be used. And around the world, we're seeing more and more countries and regions wishing to adopt the UNFC either generically within their region or for specific case problems, whether this be the African Minerals Development Corporation using the UNFC across the African Union for reporting of minerals, whether it's in Europe where DG Grow is looking to use it for the reporting of volumes for themselves. We've had a large contingent from Central America here in Geneva this week, looking forward to applying the UNFC for issues related to geothermal energy within their region. We're seeing uptake across the globe for the UNFC, and I think it's at a really exciting point. However, this brings some obligations to those of us within the EGRM, is that we need to have better outreach and communication of what the EGRM can do and how to apply it effectively and consistently and comparably around the regions. The power of the UNFC is in its ability to present information in a consistent and comparable fashion across commodities, across regions, across project types. We can only do this, however, if it is applied consistently. And for us to do this, we need to ensure that we have really good communication around the world on this. One of the things we're looking to do is the development of international centers of excellence, further training courses, more outreach to individual nations or regions that want to have additional work. We're further looking to work more with the UN, UN's sister regions to the UNECE, whether that be ECLAC in Latin America or Africa, Central Asia, around the world on these scopes as well. And finally, we're at a stage where the UN RMS, the resource management system, which will allow us to take the classification of projects and resources that we've done within the UNFC and actually start to use that information to better apply and manage those resources. It's also reaching a key stage where it's also going to be ready for application soon. And the work that's being done by the EGRM on that is of critical importance. I think we have an exciting day here lined out of information that we have around the work that the EGRM is doing. We're going to be kicking it off this morning with a discussion on a potential for a realignment and particularly an evolution of the structure and how we work within the EGRM. In some ways, we've gotten a bit too big for our boots. We've grown so fast and we're covering so many different areas within the EGRM. We need to make sure that we've got an organization that's really well designed to go out and meet these operational difficulties that we're going to have as we enter this communication and outreach stage of the work we're doing. So I'll stop there so that we can continue with the sessions this morning. And we'll pass off first to Denise Mulholland, who's the Secretary of the Committee on Sustainable Energy, to give an update on activities there.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give you a quick update on what happened at the committee session. We had a session 21st to the 23rd of September, just a few weeks ago. And I wanted to give you a quick overview of what happened that's related to the EGRM. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but we will have this posted online so you can read them in more detail and of course, look at the full report there as well. There we go. Sorry about that. So a big topic of focus for the committee session was resiliency and building resilient energy systems in the ECE region. And certainly the work of this group was noted, the critical importance of building resilient energy systems, including sustainable resource management, was noted as very important. And the committee recognized that a lot of work is going on across the expert groups in this area, but did call upon the subsidiary bodies, including EGRM, to subsidiate or to formulate proposals that support efforts to build more resilient energy systems going forward. The committee also launched a special activities area that's going to coordinate and promote efforts related to energy resilience across the region. And it's called the ECE Platform on Resilient Energy Systems. So much of your work related to resilient energy systems will fall under that platform. As Dave mentioned, the International Centers of Excellence on Sustainable Resource Management was noted by the committee, and they would like to have an update on your efforts at the next committee session. They did call on ECE and non-ECE member states, international organizations, industry, and the regional commissions to implement the UNRMS principles and requirements as a matter of urgency. So echoing what Dave said, there's a lot of interest and demand for your resources. Specific to UNRMS, they noted with appreciation the draft document. They recommended the accelerated testing and implementation of UNRMS principles and requirements, and requested the Secretariat raise extra budgetary funds and mobilize the expert communities required for various tasks. They also requested the Secretariat to publish the UNRMS principles and requirements as an official publication, subject to further consideration and unanimous adoption by this expert group. In terms of the draft document that was submitted to the committee, Sustainable Management of Critical Raw Materials Required for the Low Carbon Energy Transition, they recognized the value of this document and requested that the expert group discuss and develop the concepts further, and then based on common understanding, develop guidelines, best practices, and an information framework for the management of critical raw materials. With respect to another document that was submitted, a draft document for the committee, Resource as a Service, they noted that this was an important document and required further discussion and clarification. So they requested that the expert group discuss and clarify this concept further and develop case studies on resources as a service. As Dave noted, the establishment of the UN Working Group on Transforming the Extractive Industries for Sustainable Development, they noted that with appreciation and requested that the expert group on resource management and other relevant expert groups fully engage in the activities of this working group. and support the implementation of the ECE's 5-point agenda on sustainable resource management. We have 2 decisions that we have proposed, that the committee has proposed for the Economic and Social Council. We're proposing it for the commission. We've asked, basically, the committee will be asking the commission, or recommending to the commission, that they propose a draft decision to ECOSOC to invite the application of UNRMS principles and requirements worldwide. So again, that draws further attention to your efforts, further attention to UNRMS, and increases the demand for this product. And on another note, with respect to requests that we're going to pursue through the commission and then hopefully to ECOSOC, the committee noted the critical importance of this area of work in particular, and the increased demand on your products and the needs that the member states are bringing forward in this area. And recalling that the regular budget support for this activity has remained low and unchanged for many, many years. They've decided to recommend to the commission that it consider requesting additional resources for this particular body of work. Hydrogen was another big area of discussion and a very important topic during the committee session. And this is one where certainly your work came up again. Specifically, the committee requested that the expert group on resource management investigate existing classifications and specifications for hydrogen and develop, where appropriate, specifications for the application of UNRMS and UNFC to hydrogen products and production technologies. So this, of course, increases the demand and reach of this product. And also for the group to develop pilot hydrogen resource management projects and case studies that apply the UNRMS principles. There are some other ones that are just here that I will mention. There really others are in the lead, or it's just more of a collaborative types of committee conclusions and recommendations. But essentially, on hydrogen, the group of experts on gas will be leading the work of the subprogram, but they will be doing so in close collaboration with the other groups of experts, in particular this one. And they'll be developing a timeline and a terms of reference for this work, and we'll be reaching out to the EGRM community for that, to help with that process. Similarly, the group of experts on gas will be continuing to develop a scientifically based terminology for hydrogen, but they will be doing that in close collaboration with other groups of experts, including EGRM. The committee also requested that all groups of experts, so including this one, work to explore opportunities to move towards a guarantee of origin for hydrogen, subject to the availability of resources, and requested some reporting back on this at the next committee session. And then these are just sort of administrative things. The committee will be doing internal evaluations, or ECE will be doing internal evaluations, and they will be focusing on the theme of sustainable resource management and looking at basically the activities that fall under the regular budget for UNFC and UNRMS. And then also the committee endorsed the publications that we had submitted and said that, if UNRMS principles and requirements are not published, that we could replace it with some case studies that would focus on raw materials. So lots to do and lots of interest in your work. And I wish you a good session today.
Thank you very much, Denise. It was a really good session meeting, this last committee meeting, and really appreciate the commitment and approval of the work that we're doing here that the committee had. Now I'd like to pass over to Charlotte, who will lead us through a selection of some new members of the Bureau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So item 2 is election of officers. So we've received 3 nominations for the position of vice chair. You can see them on the screen. Ms. Branka Nečević from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Viktor Babashev from Kazakhstan. Mr. Babashev is here in the meeting room. Mr. Zhu Zhuanhua from the People's Republic of China, and we have the delegation from China online participating virtually. Do we have any other nominations? Do we have any? I can't see any, and I can't see any online. Do we have any objections to the 3 proposed nominations for the position of vice chair? I can't see any, Mr. Chair. So with that, they are elected for a period of 2 years for the position of vice chair. So sincere congratulations and very much look forward to working with you all. Just if we could move to the next slide. There have been some changes, Mr. Chair, to the Bureau since the 12th session of the expert group on resource management. So the European Federation of Geologists, Mr. Michael Neumann has been replaced by Mr. Glenn Burridge. For the African Union Commission, Mr. Frank Mugani has been replaced by Ms. Marit Kittel. Marit Kittel was with the Economic Commission for Africa, and she is now the interim director of the African Minerals Development Center that the chair mentioned just a few minutes ago. Mr. Tunde Erisikola from Nigeria has stepped down, but he will actually be supporting Marit Kittel because he's now moved to the African Minerals Development Center. And Mr. Alistair Jones, who was the chair of the Technical Advisory Group, he has stepped down and he has been replaced by the 2 new co-chairs of the Technical Advisory Group, Mr. Alexander Spielman and Mr. Satinder Purewell. So those are the changes, Mr. Chair. And so if I could move to the next slide, I'd like to just run through the full list of who the Bureau members are for you. So we have our chair, Mr. David McDonald from the United States. The first vice chair is Mr. Igor Shporov from the Russian Federation. In terms of vice chairs, we have Miss Nurangiz Farayuleva from Azerbaijan, Ms. Branka Nechovic from Bosnia and Herzegovina, just elected, Mr. Viktor Babashev, Kazakhstan, just elected, Mr. Stig Morten Knudsen from Norway, Mr. Rafael Mistal from Poland, Ms. Teresa Ponce de Leo from Portugal, Ms. Erika Ingvalt from Sweden, Ms. Michelle Erswa from Turkey, Ms. Karen Hanghoy from the United Kingdom. Karen is here in the meeting room. Ms. Sarah Forbes from the United States of America. And the list is not yet finished, Mr. Chair. And we have Mr. Andrew Cross from Australia, Mr. Zhu from the People's Republic of China, who has just been elected, Mr. Hussein Alaboun from Jordan, Mr. Ulises Neri from Mexico, Mr. Milan Grohol representing the European Commission DG Grow, Ms. Marit Kittel from the African Union Commission, Mr. Jung Ju Lee from the Coordinating Committee for Geoscience Programs in East and Southeast Asia, Mr. Roger Dixon representing CRISCO, Mr. Glenn Burridge representing EFG, Mr. Zoltan Horvath representing Eurogeosurveys, Mr. Henri Payer from the International Atomic Energy Agency, Ms. Joya Falcone from the International Geothermal Association, Mr. Luis Lopez from the Latin American Mining Organization, Mr. Bernard Sayev from representing the Society of Petroleum Engineers, and as I mentioned, Mr. Alexander Spielman and Satinder Purewell, who are the co-chairs of the Technical Advisory Group. So that, Mr. Chair, is your bureau. It is a very big bureau, but I think it's a reflection just of the number of stakeholders that this expert group has and the need for us to cooperate closely with the other our sister regional commissions and the various organizations with whom we work closely and with whom we have MOUs. And in the MOUs, it is specified that they will be working with us specifically to help us implement and deploy UNFC and UNRMS around the world, and also provide us with technical expertise and input. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And I'll reiterate your comments of welcome to our new Bureau members, and sad to see the ones that have moved on from the Bureau. But actually, I know all of them. I know all of them will be continuing to be involved in the work that the EGRM is doing. So that's fantastic. We'll move on to a first substantive agenda item, which is panel number 2, agenda item 4, looking at the EGRM delivery of the sustainable development. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong piece there. Looking at the realignment of the expert group on resource management, which is agenda item 3. We'll have 3 speakers during the session, in addition to myself, discussing the potential for a realignment of the EGRM organization to help better aid us in achieving the massive work that we're having to go forward with. Can we put the slides up, Harry? Yeah. Okay. You're going to have to forward these because I can't do that. Okay. So this presentation that we'll be going through today is it's labeled as a proposal here. I would say it's actually a pre-proposal. This is just a set of ideas that the Bureau and some select members of the TAG have put together on a way to look at realigning the way the EGRM is organized to better aid us in achieving the goals that I laid out in my brief instruction, which the key two of which I would say are the actual implementation of the UNFC and UNRMS, and better aiding and communicating how to apply the UNFC and UNRMS. It put a little bit less emphasis on development of the systems and more on actually getting people out there using it effectively. So can we go to the next slide, please? So the proposal is to take the EGRM, of course, we're a UN expert advisory group on resource classification and management. And our key is to make sure that we're aligned to the UN core principles of values, most notably issues related around the SDGs and Agenda 2030. We report through the Committee on Sustainable Energy as our parent organization. We want to make sure that the activities of the EGRM and the Secretariat are fully aligned with the SDGs and the relatively new UN policy brief on transforming extractive industries for sustainable development. As you can see from the Bureau list that Charlotte just went over, we've become quite complex in our structure. We have a large number of bodies. We have a large group of people. The EGRM is many hundreds of people. I think there's about 500 people on the mailing list right now. And those of you who have attended our kind of our normal sessions that we have annually, we regularly get 300 people attending those in person. So we do have a large number of people that are looking at being engaged. We've got 19 plus subgroups that are looking at different issues, whether they be commodity specific issues, issues around sustainability and environmental issues, finance issues, a large number of groups working on different facets of the EGRM work. And then additionally, we have the issue of around operations, which is actually taking the proposals that are coming out of the EGRM and the Bureau and actually implementing and putting those into practice. We have a technical advisory group that does that now for certain issues, mainly around the different commodity types. But we have other issues that would be better placed in an operations group, such as our communications task force, training groups, and perhaps some of the other groups, such as promoting women within the extractive industries. So we've set together a proposal here that we hope will address some of these different issues and better align the EGRM structure and management, the Bureau, to achieve these goals. We go to the next slide, please. So what we're proposing is that the TAG be evolved. We're not making a significant change to it, but we're going to have the group modified in some ways, as we'll discuss in a few moments there, to aid in the effective and efficient delivery of products, communications, and technical review of materials at the request of the Bureau. This operations group will have an operational mandate around making and implementing ideas that come out of the Bureau and the EGRM to better align the work they are doing to the needs of our stakeholder groups. I found that it's in some ways within the existing organization of the Bureau and TAG right now is that we've tended to be a bit more focused on developing products and less on aiding our stakeholders to apply those products and to engage with the stakeholders more to find out what it is they actually want from us and what their needs are in managing their resources within their regions or countries. And this will hopefully allow us to better focus on that. We also need to actively cooperate more with UNECE sister regional commissions, whether it be Africa, Latin America, Asia Pacific, or Western Asia. Additionally, we'd like to work to develop more facilities and engagement from the Secretariat through their ongoing administrative leadership. The Secretariat is absolutely fundamental to the success of the EGRM. We couldn't do it without them. They are fantastic, all of them, and it's critical for delivery of any of our products that they be fully engaged. I know they're extremely overworked, and we would like to look at and explore ways that we could perhaps increase the number of full-time staff working on our projects, and also looking at where we can get some regular budgetary support. We're continuously searching for extra budgetary funding, but really if the committee, as they've stated in their recent comments, believes that the work we're doing is fundamental, it seems to me that the UNECE should be looking at funding us through our regular budgetary process. Next slide, please. So what we're looking at is an organization that follows along the lines of what we've shown here. The key is the EGRM. So our world is really about the EGRM. Those 500 some odd, how many people are on our contact list? 5,000. 5,000. Oh, okay, I missed a zero there. Okay, so actually there's 5,000 people. Typically we have 500 people, I would say, that are active within the EGRM. So we have this huge contact list. We have working groups within those, and we have individual members that all support those. Within those groups there, we go out and pick people to be on our bureau. And these comprise representatives from the UNECE member states. And we're looking at a bureau potentially that would be about 8 to 10 members in this case. We want these to be all of them to be representatives of the member states. If you look through that list that we just saw, you would have seen that a large percentage of them were commodity representatives from different stakeholder commodity groups, whether they be the Society of Petroleum Engineers, CRISCO for mining, International Geothermal Association, ones that were specifically representing individual commodity groups. In some ways, that was a bit of a push. We want to change the Bureau into more of a pull type of situation where individual member states and regions are telling us what they need to be able to manage their resources appropriately, so that we can ensure that we're providing the right products from them, rather than having the commodity groups pushing and saying, this is what we think you need. We'd rather have the member states deciding what the EGRM should be working on to best meet their goals there. We're looking at setting up an operations group, which would be, this is the evolution of the tag as we discussed before. This group would consist of the existing working groups, task forces, et cetera, that do the actual fundamental product development within the EGRM. This group would also be looking at working on the communication strategy for what we're going to have going forward. Now, these are all as I said before, this is just simply a proposal. There'll be modifications made to this as we continue to develop the process going forward. And then finally, of course, we've got this large EGRM group that sits out there, which is really the core of our group. They'll participate through the annual EGRM meetings, but we hopefully will have more and more regular events, newsletters for these 5,000 some odd members that sit out there. In particular, we'd like to see more engagement through training seminars, of which we've had quite a few this year, and I think we'll go over those later on. And of course, the Secretariat sits there as really the glue that holds all of this together to make sure that we can deliver on our products. The next slide, please. So the Bureau, as I said, will consist of representatives of the member states. This group is going to be setting the strategic direction for EGRM activities and defining the reference for all activities, terms of reference for the activities between the sessions of the EGRM. The EGRM membership, of course, is the group that actually sets the direction. But while we're out of session there, the Bureau is the one that is the group that's tasked with ensuring that we're meeting the goals of that EGRM. The EGRM will have an operations group that will report to it. And this group will be tasked with delivering on the Bureau's proposals and giving advice to the Bureau on a specific level. They'll be the sort of the technical, people that are at the coalface, doing the work and understanding the issues associated with implementing any projects that we have there. The operations group co-chairs will be ex officio members of the Bureau, and reporting into them will be all of the working group chairs who on occasion will be, as needed, would be invited into the Bureau meetings as needed. So effectively, the Bureau operates much as it does now today, except it's going to be focused on member states rather than on commodity groups. Okay, next slide. The operations group, and I've called this the operations group here just to give us a single name to go through this presentation. We don't know actually what anything's going to be called. It's really about the function that this group is going to be providing here. This operations group, as I said, is going to comprise of the working group chairs, the strategic task forces that we have. It will also be the focal point for our international centers of excellence on sustainable resource management. Their primary goal is going to be to advise the Bureau and Secretariat on operational issues associated with achieving the goals and to help deliver on any specific Bureau proposals. So this is going to be the group of people that's going to be writing documents, developing training sessions, leading outreach communications with different groups here. This is really the group that gets stuff done, frankly. Okay, next slide. The members of the operations group, I said, will be the chairs of the working groups. There's a brief list there of some of the working groups that we have out there, but they also represent the different task force that we have. We envision perhaps that the OG would be co-chaired by 3 representatives of the stakeholder groups, so that we would have good representation there, and they would be on a rotating basis. So we would be getting ideas from finance, from the commodity groups, from governments, from the finance organizations, all these being taken in here to make sure that the output of this group meets the needs of all these different stakeholders. Next slide, please. And what we're hoping from the Secretariat is, frankly, it's where I believe they're really working at the bare minimum of what they can do on regular budgetary support. We'd like to see, additional staff time allocated to it. If the Secretariat is going to support this expanded EGRM and the goals that we're hoping to do, we're going to need to have more full-time staff and contractors from them. The group executes an awful lot of technical and organizational work for us on a continuing basis, and we certainly appreciate that. We wouldn't be able to have done what we've done up to now without that Secretariat. There's a few examples here: product creation, analysis of training materials, data science, all that stuff that has been either done by or aided by the Secretariat in working those. And we would like to look at ways that we could perhaps improve the organization of the Secretariat going forward, and we'll continue to look at those activities moving forward. I'm sorry to dump this all on your first meeting here with us, Dario, but next slide, please. So, as I said, what I've presented to you there are just some rough ideas of how we'd like to see the group reorganized. I think the biggest change there is making the Bureau focused on member states' concerns and issues. I think that's the key real big driver change here. I'm hoping that this would make us more responsive to the member states' concerns and issues, and help them in making the right choice of whether adoption of the UNFC and UNRMS is the right decision for them. So we hope to have a concrete proposal that we'll submit at EGRM 14 in April of next year, and that will be highlighted by discussions at this meeting here, which are going to be very brief, obviously, but also hopefully we'll be able to continue these discussions during the next few months in any other formats that the EGRM views as appropriate. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to pass off to the co-writer of that presentation, who is Satinder Purwal. Satinder, have you got some comments you'd like to make on this?
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, where you are. I hope you can hear me. Apologies, it took a few moments for me to join. I think it's due to IT issues, but I think these are resolved. Can you hear me firstly?
Yes, we can.
Okay, okay, great, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you very much, Dave, for giving a fair presentation of what has been done in the last year or so. I just want to firstly give you a very, very brief genesis of where we come from on this proposal. There were two proposals made last year, and we had a meeting in April this year in Geneva, and a select number of Bureau and TAG members met, and we discussed the two proposals. And subsequent to that, a TAG proposal was made to the Bureau. And that TAG proposal was discussed twice by the Bureau, and the second time was just this month, and that was all the comments from the previous Bureau meeting were incorporated as best as we could. And I just want, I don't want to cover what Dave has already covered. I think I did a pretty good job here, but I do want to add some nuances and some changes which I think Dave has made in the last, I guess, few days. So next slide, please. This was the proposal which was discussed at the Bureau meeting last time. And I think Dave's covered most of the points, except I want to mention bullet number 4 and 5, which is the operations. Dave has proposed a single a name, if you like, for a new tag. In fact, what the Bureau suggests is that we need to come up with a different name, and these are the 3 names we came up with. An Operations Advisory Executive, OAE, Operations Advisory Committee, OAC, or Technical Operations Executive, TOE, and any one of those or something else. It doesn't really matter. I think it's a 3-letter acronym would be preferable than 2 letters. That's number 1 point. And in the next bullet, I think Dave covered most of these pretty well. I think what we wanted to focus on was we don't want the Bureau to, or TAG, to be a gatekeeper to the Bureau. I think it's been somewhat, how can I say, not very effective in the past. So we want to make sure that both entities work together, and the Bureau only sets the strategic direction rather than take an active role on what the TAG or the new TAG does. And I think those are the key points I wanted to make here. The rest of the points or bullets, Dave has covered pretty well. Thank you. Next slide, please. Again, I won't labor on this one. Dave has covered this. I'll put this in just as a reminder in case I wanted to add something new. Next slide, please. Now, I want to focus on something. These are all the slides, again, which were in the original proposal to the Bureau. So I want to cover them in a bit more details for your information and consideration. What we're focusing on, something new, new circularity, if you will. There are 2 different models. The old business model, if you will, which is a kind of a top-down approach. And we need to look at a new business model, which is circular. And it's a subscriber focus, if you will, and in other words, a stakeholder focus. And we need to think about that and make sure that we meet the expectations of the subscribers, or the stakeholders. And I think Dave alluded to that in his remarks. Next slide, please. So the new EGRM, there are three key points here. We have the primary stakeholders, which is the UN, and of course the core functions, then the governments, the regional EU and AU, etc. And then you have the industry. And this is like a pyramid. And in this, you've got on the left-hand side, the resources content, which is in essence, the core principles, what are the critical needs, which was also alluded to, critical raw materials and critical capabilities, of course, and the governance. And then the funding, which is a key element of a requirement, if you will, in order for us to achieve what we want to achieve in the future with UNFCA, UNRMS uptake globally. And what the key point again here is that we need to ensure this is a public good, and through the SDGs, critical needs, along with the critical materials, and use the core function of UN. And we propose that we need something like $100 million to do this properly, rather than get, $5 million or $2 million or $10 million here and there, which is only a kind of a piecemeal approach. We need a longer term approach. And as Dave also mentioned, that the Secretariat has to be expanded considerably in order to meet all our objectives in the future. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what we have primary stakeholders, as we mentioned, and then we have also the boundary conditions, and need case studies. There's all sorts of issues here with the green steel, green cement, green ammonia, etc., lithium. And then the sources of funding, where are we going to get the funds? Well, of course, there's the banks, and then there's the finance from ESG, there are green bonds, then trading and debt swaps. So I think we need to focus on all of these in order to gain funding to achieve our goals. And then there has to be reporting and governance. Key principles have to be adhered to: social resource contract, ESG, equator principles, public good standards, and informed consent. These are all key principles which we need to adhere to in order to achieve governance objectives. Next slide, please. What are the desired outcomes for resources? We have, the Earth has only finite resources. We all recognize that. We need to meet the SDGs and the Agenda 2030, two key elements in our objectives. And identification of human needs and raw materials, and critical human resources, ensure governance, and enable decisioneering, critical and strategic. And the primary stakeholders, UN will provide the lead function, enables governments to make strategic energy policy decisions, and of course there's the regional entities to disseminate all this. How are we going to use the funds? And this is UN endorsed and led, and we want fit for purpose, achieve our goals, which will be measurable, seen as global good for planet Earth. And we need to expand the Secretariat, as mentioned, and ensure the deliverables and outcomes. And so there's lots of ways how we can do this, but I think these are the high level principles which we're mentioning here. Next slide, please. And this is the structure and desired outcomes. So this is just a kind of if you like a diamond, previously you've seen the pyramid and then the inverted pyramid. This is a kind of a overview of what I've just said in the previous slides. So I think it's a kind of a summary. And I think what's the key thing here is that we need to move forward and expand the secretariat and get the funding in place and ensure that we meet the objectives and of the SDGs and the 2030 agenda. And I think that's the last slide, and I'm going to stop there. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Satinder. We'll have a discussion or questions towards the end of the session if we're able to, if we have time for that. Pass on now to, thank you very much for that. So pass on now to Stig Morten Knudsen, who's the Vice Chair of the EGRM, talking about UNRMS development.
Hello, thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So if you just do the first slide. First of all, thanks for allowing me to join in by video, and I'm really sorry I can't join you, but hopefully next time. So I'm going to take maybe a little bit bird's view approach to what we are discussing, and to make it very short, the proposal that I think is, or not think, the proposal that Dave has gone through, I think maybe is on a good place to sort of start. And I do think that what we are doing right now is, as it says on the screen here, I think it is time to really deploy the system. And I think what we see around us is maybe not a good time, but it really shout out kind of a need to do something about what we are doing, both with resources and also how we are organizing the work with our resources. So that's what I'm trying to say with a few, 2, 3, maybe highlight or bullet points. And one of them is, as it says here, everything has its time. I think it's important that we focus on the results and maybe not only on the tools. The tools is just something we use to get to the results. And we should never sort of get our eyes off the results, which is after all the SDGs and the 2030 agenda. So that I think is really utmost important that we keep in mind. And then I just proposed a few bullet points here maybe that we should keep in mind. And I think what really is important is the outreach. And I think you touched upon that, Dave. I think we really need to tell people what we are doing. And if you can't tell people in an easy way what we are doing and how we are doing it, then maybe we need to adjust how we are doing that outreach. So if you do the next slide, please. And that really goes into what I'm saying here. The common denominator, as I call it, for what we are doing, I think, is to simplify. And simplify is helping us, I think, to buy in from experts, but also not at least from stakeholders, be it governments or industry or whatever have you. I think that is important. And in Norway, for instance, we are using UNRMS and our system for petroleum resources, for instance, which has served us extremely well, is aligned with the system. And it even goes all the way from how the companies are reporting and all the way into the national budget. But if I ask someone, my minister or from the industry and so, have you heard about UNRMS? Have you heard about UNFC? They will probably just have a glassy eye on me and said, what are you talking about? So I think we have a huge upside in trying to simplify what we do and also how we communicate that outwards. And if you just do the last slide. Yeah. I think this is what we need to maybe even be even better at communicating. What is the purpose with UNRMS or UNFC as a framework? And that is actually reaching for the 2030 goals. I am a fairly pragmatic person. I'm not too occupied with how we get there, but we do need to get there. And I think if we are able to get onto some of these basic principles, maybe that is something that could or should be in that proposal that we are talking about today. And I should be very careful about saying that this is the right way or this is the wrong way. I haven't been in the system too long, but I do see that we might need to do some changes. And maybe what is on the table is a good start or a good approach. So I think I'll leave it with that, and I'll be happy to talk more if we get a time after the next presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Stig Morten. Totally agree with your comments around the importance of getting this deployment out. And there, while there's never a perfect time for it, there's no time like the present to have it forward. Karen, can we pass over to Karen Hangho, who's going to talk about issues around deployment.
Yes, thank you very much. I don't have any slides, but I think that we've gotten a pretty comprehensive sort of overview of the thinking that's got into this realignment or restructuring or whatever you want to call it. And I think that from my perspective, I've been on the Bureau for approximately 2 years. So it's been through the height of COVID. And I think one of the observations I've had is that it's a very large group, and especially it becomes extremely evident when you meet on Zoom only. I think it becomes a little bit more manageable when we're getting into the mix and hybrid working as we're doing it today. But it's a very large group and a very complex group. So I very strongly support simplifying it, making it much, much more efficient. I think that is actually the core of this proposal, is to make almost a smaller, more agile bureau that is able to support the rest of the organization that is delivering most of the work. So the operational groups, as we have heard about before. I think the really big, I agree completely with the previous speaker. I think that it's much more interesting to talk about what we're trying to achieve than exactly describing the tools over and over again. And I think there's been a little bit of an element of that, because once you become an expert in a tool, the tool and the sort of small detail of how you've developed certain parts of the tools become incredibly interesting. And the people you've developed it with are equally interested in that. And so when we have that conversation, we tend to focus very much on the detail of the tool. And I completely agree, it's time to move beyond that. And so we need a more agile organization to be able to deliver that, because now we want to talk about what we are trying to achieve. And I think that the big elephant in the room, it was touched on by Satinder, is really the funding for this. How do we actually achieve financial sustainability for this on a time scale that makes sense? And that's a pretty long time scale, because it was also pointed out in some of the slides. It's about public good. It's about delivering things, about delivering the sustainable development goals. It's about delivering real change across the globe. And that takes a long time. And it doesn't come with a decision that's made in a room like this and not implemented on the ground. So we need an agile and a result-focused way of taking this forward. And I do think now is actually the perfect time. I think it is time. We're coming out of the pandemic. We have, I think, across the globe, really acknowledged the resource dependency and how vulnerable it makes us, and how important it is that we develop these long-term solutions, because there's been many short-term solutions developed on resources and they're failing us now. So I think it is the time to do it. So I think we need to talk about the funding. I think we need to talk about the terms of reference. That's the next step. If there's general support in trying to develop this into a full-fledged proposal, such a proposal needs to come with a business model, with a model for how we're going to sustain it financially, but also terms of reference for the Bureau, for the wider expert group, and especially perhaps for the operational group, which I think will be delivering again a lot of the work that will be decided on or steered strategically from the Bureau. So those two things, I think, are the tasks that we have ahead of us if we get the support to move forward with this realignment. I think I want to stop there.
Yeah, thanks very much, Karen. And I appreciate your candor and openness about Now, this is the right time. Actually, you do have to make a decision at some point to go forward. So what we've presented to you here is this morning is just some ideas about how we can better align ourselves to achieve these goals, as Karen and Stig Morton, I think, both pointed out really clearly there, that this is about achieving these goals in the most effective way possible. And I think both of them really gave good elevator pitches about how to do this, as Stig Morton talked about. We've got a few minutes here, so we'll open up for a couple of questions or comments that people may have, and we'll take these on board. And we'd really like anybody who has any other ideas during the coming weeks here, or thoughts on this, to get in touch with Charlotte or myself or any member of the Bureau, and we will take those on board as we further continue to develop this this proposal. So any questions, either in the room or online?
Thank you. Is this on? Yeah, thank you. Well, I just wanted to support Dave's presentation. I think you hit the points, well supported by Stig Morten and Karen, and also, of course, the other views that were presented. I have 2 points. One is to consider the relationship that Denise described to other expert groups and other committees when reviewing the proposal. Not that I have a conclusion on that, but I think it's appropriate in the studies that are going forward to make sure that our products are serving also the other expert groups to the extent it's natural, and the other committees. And Denise pointed out that there is a demand for that. Then I have just a concern. I don't know if it's anything to take up or not, but we are essentially putting the GRM into the operations group and having a council of member states in the Bureau. And my concern is about bureaucratizing the system by putting a level of management in between there. But this is subject to, of course, considerations as this matures. So those are the 2 points I thought I'd contribute with. Thank you.
Thanks for those, Sigurd. Your first one on making sure that we explicitly recognize the importance of working with our sister expert groups, I think is a really good one. And I'll definitely make sure that we put that into the mix there. The expert groups have really only relatively recently started working together actively. We're having regular meetings now, the chairs of the different expert groups. We're working on a project about looking at resiliency around energy systems. And I think that actually is very important to make sure that it's explicitly part of the terms of reference to this. So I'll make sure that we do add that. In terms of your second comment around making a bit of a bureaucratic mess of the Bureau, and I think that is something that I do have a great deal of concern about how to do that. One problem we've had with the existing structure is that sometimes working groups tend to go off on a path that they believe is best for the subject matter that they're working on, and they're making the right decisions for that narrow area that they're working on, and don't always have a view of the wider picture, that sometimes a compromise needs to be made here to be able to achieve all the goals. And that's really that's what we're trying to achieve with this reorganization, is to eliminate those sorts of issues, and it is a real challenge. Could I pass to Joya Falcone, who's online? Oh, go ahead. Charlotte has a comment to make first.
Yeah, thank you, Sigurd, for those comments, and fully support what you've said about working with the other groups of experts, but also the other committees in ECE, but also I think working with the other regional commissions and the working group on transforming the extractive industries for sustainable development. And just to flag in terms of the other sectoral committees, we have started to work very closely with our committee on, I think it's trade, or the division on trade and economic integration and cooperation. And they're actually starting to do work on transparency and traceability in mineral value chains. So it's really important that we cooperate there. And then also with our colleagues who work in the environment division that are working on mine tailings facilities, but also on social issues and social environmental impact assessments, etc. So those are all hugely important. So thank you so much for flagging that.
Joya, could you come in online? I don't know if you.
Thanks, Dave. I hope everyone can hear me. Just a couple of related comments. I think it's always difficult to define the UNFC. I've heard the names, tools or products being mentioned already, but we're actually referring at the moment to a set of documents, and this has been pointed out by stakeholders on several occasions as something potentially not so user-friendly. So I think it is a set of documents at the moment, guidelines, and maybe one outstanding question is how we convert that into truly tools. And I think it's restructuring of the GRM is welcome, inevitable. It's always about keeping up with times and changes, and things are changing very, very fast in the energy arena and in the sustainability arena for sure. There is time for refinements of the proposal, but I personally support it. And I think it's also about maybe discussing when it's going to be the right time to implement such structural change of the GRM in relation to the readiness of the documents that we develop and support. And at the moment, as we know, there is still a little bit of homework to be done, for example, in terms of updating the sub-commodity renewable specifications to align them with the latest release of the UNFC, maybe a couple of bridging documents that also require updating. So would it be maybe optimum to wait for such updates to be implemented before enforcing a more radical change of structure of the GRM? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Julia. I mean, clearly we don't want to get ahead of ourselves in making any changes there. I do think that the structural changes that we're talking about will aid the ongoing maintenance of the documents, because it's going to put more focus on issues around implementation, training, update in terms of making documents usable, as opposed to going out and developing new new work for the sake of making things perfect. I think what we're looking at here is there's a, the phrase that the pursuit for perfection, it can often be a problem, is that we need to make sure that when we have tools that are adequate and are satisfactory in meeting the needs, that we start to apply them at that stage there. And I think that's what we're trying to do in this case here. I think that's all the questions we have right now.
No, there's a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, there is one more question here.
There's a hand up. Somebody's got, there's a Zoom user, I don't know who that
Okay,
is.
there's someone who has their hand up. I can't tell the name.
If they can announce who they are.
If they'd announce who they are, you can go ahead and do that. No, okay.
And then just Mr. Chair, so Bernard Sayer, he put some comments in the chat. So basically, he very much supported Sigurt's concerns around the risk of becoming too bureaucratic. And then he also posed a question on the relationship with non-UNECE member states, since the proposal is only to have UNECE member states represented. So, Mr. Chair, I think Bernard's raised a very good comment. And I think this is something that the Bureau and the working group chairs would need to discuss to ensure that we have all the users adequately represented. Obviously, the work is housed here at UNECE, and at the end of the day, the decision-making body is our Committee on Sustainable Energy. But by having this as an expert group, we work on consensus and have to date had all stakeholders represented, as we see, and that has resulted in a very large Bureau. And I can see that the Zoom user is Teresa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Teresa, please.
You're on.
Okay,
mute,
I'm
Teresa. There you go.
unmuted. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm sorry, I lost my laptop this weekend because there was a glass of iced tea that fell on the keyboard. So I'm with the iPad, and this is a different technology. So my question is, we discussed today that the moment is now, and structural changes are going on, but we need to rush because it's really important. And I would like to tackle one point that is about collaboration. We have in the European Union already a taxonomy, financial taxonomy for sustainability, very well developed and based on sustainable development goals, not on the 17th. They select for projects 6 critical sustainable development goals. And I think if it is, I would like to ask your opinion, it is now the time that we look at this framework and try to take the most of it, because it's already very detailed, defined.
Yeah, I don't think I have a strict answer for you now, Teresa. I am in agreement with you that there are issues around sustainability versus greenness of these projects. I think that's something that the Bureau will need to take on board as we continue to develop the proposal for the 14th session. So thank you for that.
So my question is that no one talks about this. No one.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, indeed, the EU taxonomy has been developed by the European Commission and the European Union. It concerns mostly the environmental aspects. It does not take into account today yet the social and governance aspects of the ESG trio. So definitely it's a set of criteria and standards which are designed on the basis of the needs of the member states of the European Union, which is not necessarily what is good for the European Union is good elsewhere around the world, as we're looking at a much larger platform, a much larger starting situation from the member states, not only in our region, but as well outside of our region. So we certainly take, I think the whole world is taking inspiration from the EU taxonomy. When it comes to environmental considerations, then obviously needs to be integrated with the other considerations on the social and governance aspects, but as well take into consideration the different starting position of the different member states. So it is an input in a much wider the consideration and discussion that I think that the expert groups are taking place. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to just make a little bit of I'm going to make some candid comments again. I think that the concern about adding a layer of management and perhaps more bureaucracy, I think is something we need to unpick really carefully. I actually think that this is less bureaucracy in a sense, at least in the ideal world, because I think that the slides that Santinda was showing with this is the old model and this is the new model. The new model actually ensures that there is visibility and information flow across all of the working groups and to the Bureau and to all of the expert group. But of course, the difficult questions that we will need to think about if people support this is why I think it would be so important to hear some sort of voices of support and some suggestions of how we can carry it forward. Because one of the issues, of course, that we would have to look at in connection with looking at terms of reference is how do we decide who's on the Bureau if not everyone is on the Bureau? How is the relationship between the Bureau and the wider expert group? How is that going to work? As I see it, again, I think it actually is a more agile way of working. But I almost see the expert group as a sort of general assembly of all of the members that want to sit at the table, and then the Bureau to be more of a group that takes care of the day-to-day coordination and making sure that all of the operational groups are aligned to delivering the results with the UNFC and the UNRMS.
Great. Thank you very much. Really lively conversation, and I think we got some good ideas to take forward. As I said earlier, if you have any other thoughts on this and haven't had an opportunity to express them here, please get in touch with Charlotte or myself, and we'll make sure that those get further coordinated in discussions. So thank you very much for that. We'll close this discussion now. We'll pass over to agenda item 4, which is on delivering the Sustainable Development Goals, development, maintenance, and implementation of the UNFC and UNRMS. And our moderator for this panel will be Erica Ingvald, who is online, I think. So we'll pass over to you, Erica.
It's me, madam. Can you unmute yourself, please? Thanks a lot.
Good. Try Milan. Can you put him up? Yeah, I know the first speaker is Milan Grohol, who's Vice Chair of the EGRM, to speak about issues around the draft guidance, the application UNFC for mineral and anthropogenic resources in Europe. So Milan, maybe if you could go ahead and just start.
Okay, Erica's just joined.
Oh, okay. We've got Erica back now. So go ahead, Erica.
Yes, so can you hear me now? I have huge problems with the technology here. I'm so sorry for that. But as David said, welcome to this panel 2. Thanks for arranging this, and welcome to the floor, Milan Grohol from the Commission. He's Vice Chair of the EGRM, and he'll talk about draft guidance for the application of UNFC for mineral and anthropogenic resources in Europe. Welcome, Milan.
Excellent. I was muted by organizers, so good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you very much, Erica, for kind introduction. Thank you, David, for a very good discussion in the previous panel. And thank for the opportunity to present the first version of the UNFC guidance for Europe. It's a very important milestone for us for Europe, simply because we are in a situation where we try to move and map especially the mineral resources and the anthropogenic resources in the EU and some neighboring countries. And we need more precision. If we can go to the next slide. I don't know if I can I move it or not? Probably not. So this idea of the guidance for Europe has stemmed from our long-term efforts already before the Action Plan on Critical Raw Materials 2020, where we realized that excellent UNFC guidance documents are unfortunately not sufficient for us to implement across numerous reporting systems in the member states, including the commercial systems based on CRISCO, but actually quite many legally binding national systems as well, and also to take into account different permitting processes in different countries across the EU, and not to forget also the INSPIRE directive, which is data infrastructure for geospatial data, which is also covering the mineral resources. So that's very important for, these are very important consideration why we started this work and tried to find a good guidance and to improve the guidance and make a manual for future practitioners across Europe. We would like this guidance to be used for qualified experts and resource estimate preparers in Europe, so people who are actually on the projects. We already tested it with some commercial projects, and of course for wide user audience, which would be us, governments, but not only at the EU level, but actually at all levels, EU national, regional levels as well. We would like industry to take this into account in their corporate planning and management of resources. It's one of the unique tools. So we would like to make it even easier for everybody to use it. And of course, nowadays we are trying to engage investors, especially in the raw materials area. And we need guidance which would help them as well. And of course, not to forget about the research community, which is making good use of this information. So the first version of the guidance for Europe is coming. May I ask for the next slide, please? The effort started already from my colleague Rodrigo Chanes, who was at that time in DG Grow in 2018, also with our colleague from the Bureau, Harry. Unfortunately, COVID times have a little bit delayed all the process, and with help of Slavko and the group of practitioners, there was a new wave, and public consultation successfully finished. Review team has taken into account plenty of different comments. I would like to thank especially Janne, Alistair, Henrik, Pasi, Sigurd, and Ulrich for excellent work in this direction. And we have the first document which is more adapted to the needs of European players. There are parts which are different, aimed at different users. We have the general overview for higher level users who don't need to go into details. We would have the annexes which would go in more details, like the transposing UNFC classes into INSPIRE directive, and also technology readiness levels, which is quite useful in the EU. We would have also the guidance, more precise guidance for the national reporting, and we would have also more specificity on the guidance for the mineral resources and mining waste. So that's the content which is there. And now we would like I would like to show you why on the last slide. I would like to show you what has happened and why, what we still expect from that. We have, based on the criticality action plan from 2020, we started in-depth mapping of different raw materials projects across the EU. We collected almost 1,000 projects, and we classified for a bit more than half of them under UNFC. But there is, you still see the gap, and there is a problem for member states to help us to classify that. So we hope that the guidance would help. And actually, that's the work of my colleague, Robert Thomas, who is also, I think, in the call as well with Gerardo Herrera.
We launched in parallel two big projects funded by our research program. One is Geological Service for Europe, and the other one is Futuram on secondary raw materials. Just a second, please, if you can go back. We would like to take the guidance and have it used by these projects to update the inventory of primary and secondary critical raw materials projects resources in the EU. And of course, I hope that it will be of good help for the new International Center of Excellence under this project, Geological Service for Europe. At the moment, we are in the process of public consultation and building the impact assessment for the announced EU Raw Materials Act. And we hope that the future guidance, this guidance and maybe the future updates would help to adapt to the needs which we will have in the EU and if neighboring countries who are willing to join. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Milan. Looking forward to all the work that is to come and that we're going to be successful. So the next speaker on the list is Sigurd Heiber, who is chair of the Commercial Applications Working Group. And he's going to talk about integrated application of the UNFC in resource management and commercial applications. So welcome to the table, Sigurd.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate the efforts made by carrying out this EGRM in one day. That is quite a challenge. And I must say, I miss the week-long EGRMs. It means that I will have to be very short and also refer to the documents that you have seen in the document list. So the topic is integrated application of the UNFC in resource management and commercial applications. If I can have the next slide. These are the two documents that address this subject. And you see also the people in the groups, the colleagues that are so fantastic to work with and provide such inspiration. I would encourage, I don't know if it's possible, but any in the room to stand up and any on the online to turn on their cameras so that they can be seen. I don't know if that is at all possible in this format. The Commercial Applications Working Group document is linked in on this slide for later reference, as is the document from the Common Glossary Task Force. So if I can go to the next slide, then integrated resource management and its commercial applications really requires one strong, simple, common standard. And decisions required concern a common glossary, consolidation of the specifications, and extension of the UNFC matrix. I think the first two are, well, I'll come back to the extension of the matrix in the next slide. The others, I think, are quite obvious. So, no, sorry, go back. The decisions recommended by the Common Glossary Group are as follows. 1, to approve the common glossaries contained in Annex 1 on that document for use in UNFC and its subsidiary documents, including specifications, guidance, and studies. This is the recommendations to this meeting to take that decision. The second is to request the Secretariat to tag the defined terms with hyperlinks to the definitions. This includes definitions of categories that are not in the common glossary, but in the document itself, the terms defined in the common glossary, and the terms that are defined in any subsidiary documents. This is for ease of reference for the users. Then the last point is for future research, and you may consider it as a soft recommendation, but this concerns the business reporting language that is used by the financial community. It's a continuation of bullet point 2 there, where there is a taxonomy of concepts and reports that are tagged, and a software that allows them to be recovered, being annual reports of reserves, resources, forecasts, and of course financial statements from one year to the other by an entity, a nation, and also the recovery of similar reports from different entities, different nations, or both of that. So the extended business reporting language has been around for a long time. It is extensively used for financial reporting, and I think it merits a look also for us to become more applicable on the IT platforms. Then the next slide concerns, again, the requirement for commercial assessments of opportunities and risks associated with climate change and the regulatory reforms. This is the essential point in that. And again, the decisions require a consolidated UNFC rules, as Joya mentioned, and extension of the UNFC metrics. Here I can say a bit about the metrics. There's been some questions about that, but these are the metrics that are required for the decisions. As you know, we have sources and products in the UNFC. In resource management, we need also other metrics, and that can be time series of forecasts. It can, of course, for commercial applications, we don't measure values in barrels or carats. We measure it in dollars or pounds or euros or Swiss francs. So cash flows are in there and so forth. And that can fit in the UNFC on the G-axis with a slight amount of imagination. Then to the recommendations of the commercial applications group. Again, a simple and coherent set of UNFC standards. There has and is a concern that the documents we have are so extensive and so complex, and they tend, as David said, to focus on the commodity specific, very difficult issues. My view on this is the analogy to chess, where the rules of chess are remarkably simple and the game of chess is remarkably complicated. So our focus should be to produce those simple rules associated with UNFC and the UNRMS, and try to separate that from the very difficult decision and actions that emanate from them. So here you see the extension of the metrics. I spoke about that. And then the alignment, and Dave alluded to that. It is a matter of resource management efforts conducted at the UN and the government levels, and I think also Dario spoke to that. This sets the framework conditions under which industry can deploy its best capabilities, that is, competence plus capacity, in manners that the capital market can finance. So these three will need to act together. Through the reforms, they will have to change, and they will have to consider the limitations and opportunities of the other two parties. Each one of them will have to do that and have what we call integrated dynamic capabilities to get through the reforms. And once, of course, a change has been produced, that opens the door for further changes, which illustrates why this has to be dynamic and why it is so important and also so very, very interesting going through the future that we have before us. And then on today's issue, and today in the sense that what is happening between COP26 and COP27, there is a strong need for alignment between what is done at the UN and at government levels and what is done at the entities levels by the financial community through GFANZ and International Sustainability Standards Board. So I encourage the EGRM to support efforts to align with what is happening in the financial community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sigurd. I really appreciate your comparison with chess. And I think you're really onto something with the harmonization and alignment that you suggest. So I look forward to follow this work forward. And now I would like to welcome Gioia Falcone. She's the chair of the geothermal subgroup, supported by Sulamit Kastel. And she's going to present an updated specifications for the application of UNFC to geothermal resources. Welcome, Gioia.
Thank you, Erikas, and I hope everyone can hear me okay. So indeed, I'm going to present the current status of development of the geothermal specifications. And just a brief recap for those of you who may not be familiar with the process we went through a few years ago. We started in 2014 under the umbrella of a memorandum of understanding between the UNECE and the International Geothermal Association. And then as a result of that, following the work that was done under the MOU, we produced geothermal specifications in September 2016. And those specifications were linked not only to the previous version of the master document of the UNFC, but they were also linked to an intermediary document called the renewable energy specifications. And at the same time, still in 2016, we also produced a set of case studies to aid the implementation of the geothermal specifications. This is on the contrary where we are at today. So I'm pleased to report that we are now in a position to present to you, the EGRM, a completed update of the geothermal specifications for approval by the EGRM. The update consists of a document that now links directly to the current version of the UNFC and no longer requires users to go through the intermediate step of the renewable specifications. We also envisage aiding the development of new case studies, but this time with a focus on the end users rather than the case studies being initiated and completed by EGRM itself. Just to summarize for you the key updates that you will be able to find in the new specifications as already made available via the website of the UNECE. First of all, we aligned with the UNFC 2019 update. We also, as I said before, eliminated the need for the intermediate layer of renewable energy specifications, so less documents, less paperwork for the users to go through. We clarified the use of the F4 category in the geothermal context in order to discourage the so-called practice of booking heat in place. We really want to talk about projects that are realizable. Number 4, we introduced the concept of cascaded projects and also intermediate nodes. And we updated the decision trees. Now, talking about tools versus text, the decision trees that were originally developed by Harman in our group have really proven to be a very usable tool for the end users. And where possible and where relevant, we also took the opportunity to revise the text to enhance usability. And something that we are very happy to report today is that as of September 2022, we effectively had the very first case of a place in the world making the UNFC use legislated. That place in the world is the state of Queensland in Australia, which is, as of today, the very first jurisdiction to legislate the application of UNFC for geothermal energy resources. This is great. At the same time, it probably puts a little pressure on us in that we will now have to maintain the documents evergreen, but that has always been the intention anyhow. And I'm conscious of time, so I just wanted to conclude by stressing that indeed we are pleased to present these completed specifications update to you today, hoping that it will be approved. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank the IGA UNFC ad hoc committee who has been developing these updates with me. And also specifically, we have in the room today Sulamit Castle from the Federal Institute for Geoscience and Natural Resources of Germany. She has been facilitating the uptake of the UNFC in the Central American SICA region. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joya. It's so encouraging to hear your work, and I'm sure it's going to be very helpful for practitioners with this new development that you have achieved. And it's also encouraging to hear about Australia, of course. Really makes a difference, the work we do. So thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce to you Jianhua Zhu, who is Vice Chair also of EGRM, and Jianhua, and talk about updates on Chinese bridging documents and their application prospects. So welcome to the table.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues. I'm very pleased to lead the China delegation attending today's meeting and present a China report on behalf of the Ministry of Natural Resources of the People's Republic of China. My presentation is about updates on Chinese bridging document and their application prospect. First of all, the Ministry of Natural Resources of China attached great importance to Chinese bridging documents between China, national systems, and UNFC. In 2018, with the invaluable support of the Secretary and TAG, we successfully developed the Chinese bridging document.
Excuse me, and next please. 你没有共享吗？没有共享吗 ？Yeah, OK， 他算了，就这样。他们用咱用啊。
We successfully developed the Chinese bridging document for the first time, which is a milestone progress of UNFC's global application and shows great significance. In 2021, based on the revised Chinese national system and UNFC 2019, the MNR organized a unified team of experts and efficiently, completely, and updating of Chinese bridging document. Currently, the new Chinese bridging documents are prepared in Chinese, English, Russian, and France, and now submitted to the EGMR 13 for review. Once the Chinese bridging document achieved UNECE's endorsement, the MNR of China will endorse them simultaneously in China. Currently,
The next, please.
we actively promoting the practical application of Chinese bridging document and systematically carried out case studies, aiming to support the Chinese bridging documents playing the exemplary role in international mining cooperation, especially the Belt and the Road, and show broad application prospecting in the global natural resources standard connectively.
Next, please.
Next step, we plan to cooperation closely with a global expert on the following three tasks. First, the deepening research and the global application of UNECE, UNFC, and UNMS. Second, the digital transformation of the UNFC. The third, full support for the EGMR's global academic activities and actively contribute to our UN Sustainable Development Goals. In closing, on behalf of MNR, I would like to express our sincere thanks to UNECE's Secretariat and EGRM working groups for your continuous contribution to Chinese bridging documents. And sincerely thanks to representative on international institutions and global experts for their support to our China delegation. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for your contribution with the update of the bridging documents and for the contribution to the global goals. It's a lot of work you have in front of you, and I wish you good luck with that. It's amazing to see. Now I'm going to turn back the table to Charlotte and David and Harry for closing up this session. But thank you so much to all of you who contributed to this panel.
Thank you very much, Erica, and a very, very good session. I just did want to come in with a comment related to the geothermal specifications, and thank you, Joya, and to the ad hoc group and the International Geothermal Association, but not only that have been doing all the work on for many years to develop the geothermal specifications. I just wanted to flag that we do have an impressive delegation here from Central America. So we have technical experts and decision makers here from Costa Rica, from Dominican Republic, and from El Salvador, supported by Sulamit Castel and colleagues from GIZ, the German International Cooperation Organization. We had an impressive meeting with the delegation yesterday, and it was really encouraging just to see how much work is being undertaken by the delegation to test the UNFC for application to geothermal in Central America and the SECA region, those 8 countries in the SECA region. And I think we look forward to seeing the outcome of that work. And I know that you're planning to do case studies to test the new geothermal specifications that we hope will be approved today. And hopefully you'll be able to report on that at our meeting in April. So I want to say a warm welcome. I know that you need to leave shortly, but just to say a very warm welcome. And it's been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Great. We do have a couple of moments here. Are there any questions for any of the speakers in this last session? Yeah, Serge Van Gessel online.
Yes. Yes, Dave, can you hear me? I have a question to Joya. Joya, thanks a lot for the great presentation, and also congratulations with the good work on the specifications for geothermal. We are following you in your food tracks, also with the injection projects working group, also establishing our update. And yeah, the example is very good for us also to follow yeah, your template and setup. The question I have is on the development of the decision trees. I think personally this is a really great addition, and it really is very helpful to apply the methodologies. We would like to implement those decision trees as well in our document. In how far do we need to follow, let's say, the same structure, do you think, or would there be room to adapt the model of the decision tree? So that would maybe be a general question, but yeah, how much freedom do we have to develop decision trees for the other resources specifications?
Thank you, Serge, and it's a pleasure to see you again, although virtually. I think it's a very important point, and there has already been some discussion about whether it might be appropriate to elevate the decision trees to a higher level. And I would agree that although they were born within the geothermal work, different commodities are finding them potentially useful. In fact, probably the UNFC at large. I think nothing can be excluded at this point, and we would be very open to have a conversation also with Harmen, who is the mastermind behind the development of the decision trees. I wonder whether it's possible to envisage a situation where we will have linkable or taggable, as Sigurd mentioned, decision trees that stem directly from the main UNFC document, but also maybe something specific for each commodity if required. I think this is something we need to discuss with the Bureau at large. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serge, for that good question, and to Joy for your response. I did omit to say that the colleagues from GIZ that are here, they've actually been working to develop a digital tool. And I don't know, Raphael from GIZ, whether you'd like to make a quick comment on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Charlotte. We were working in the region regarding these specifications for geothermal, and actually develop a first proposal of a digital tool in order to ease or promote further the application of the UNECE classification for geothermal. As of now, as I mentioned, it is a first proposal, but we from GIZ, from the geothermal heat utilization project in the Sikor region, are open to share our experience and, of course, get some feedback from the experts of the committee in order to enhance and strengthen the tool. So far, the tool is aiming to develop case studies, as Joya mentioned. Our focus is also to give the end user the opportunity to share the information that they have after applying the UNECE classification for geothermal, and also as working as somehow a management tool for decision makers. So we are open to share this experience also for other working groups outside of geothermal to see if the experience is also applicable for them. So maybe after this meeting, we will gladly share with the committee the first proposal. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. A great update. We look very much forward to looking at that. I think we'll pass now to doing the conclusions and recommendations for this morning's sessions. Can you put that up?
Oh, no, sorry, Russian Federation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Russian Federation has a question.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые коллеги. Очень рады всех видеть. И очень полезная была сессия, но у меня вопрос к, наверное, Дэвиду и Сигурду. И вопрос мой о возможности коммерческого применения РК ООН и СУРООН. Но в том смысле, что, может быть, нам в группе по коммерческим проектам в целях обоснования стимулирования инвестиций от системообразующих банков, таких как БРИКС, во все виды ресурсов и критических минералов, может быть, стоит разработать требования к финансовой отчетности применения РК ООН и СУРООН в рамках группы, которой руководит Сигурд.
Thanks, Igor, for those comments. They recognize the importance of any sorts of regulations, financial regulations that are happening regards to minerals and energy extraction are critical importance. And I know Sigurd's group is looking at issues around these commercial issues. I don't know, Sigurd, if you have any comments on that, or?
Well, a subgroup of our group, I think is fair to say, is trying to follow quite closely the very dynamic events that are taking place after COP26, with the International Financial Reporting Standards Board establishing the International Sustainability Standards Board. They have already two standards that have been out for public comments, subject to 2 board meetings. There was one last week. I have not been able to follow that, but they are now in a decision mode for those and intend to have them ready by the end of the year. I think they would like to talk about them at COP27, but that is my guess. There are several issues that we see with that. One that may be quite threatening to us, and I can focus on that. And this is something called Appendix B in their standard S2. That is the inclusion of the SASB standards in the financial sustainability reporting standards. The SASB standards are included by the action that was taken to include SASB in ISSB earlier this year. It's a 650-page document on various standards, and of course the extractive activity standards are there as well. There is no contact, of course, between SASB and EGRM, as I am aware of. That link is necessary to establish, and I would encourage the EGRM and the Bureau to think about how best to get in contact with them. I think, Dario, you suggested at an earlier occasion to invite the ISSB to EGRM. There is also, of course, an opportunity to meet with the ISSB, and there is a technical group, a quite extensive technical group that is looking at the standards. The standards will be included initially, as I understand it, in the I mean the Appendix B will be included in the standards as adopted this year, and then they will be internalized in ISSB and made consistent with the with the ISSB documents over time. That may take years, but we may have a situation where the SASB standards are being imposed on the industry and then reformed later. And I think it's very hard to reform them later if the industry has invested in reporting on the basis of what is now being. And this is, in my opinion, a threat to us, but it is also a fantastic opportunity if we can get cooperation with the UN and governments, the jurisdictions, work on the same standards as the entities, the companies who generate the information, then their aim, which is to assess the opportunities and risks associated with climate change and regulatory change, will be enhanced because the governments can provide a complete picture. The entities cannot. And for us at the government levels for resource management, of course, to have accurate and timely information from the industry on their projects is what we require to take or recommend the right decisions when it comes to resource management. Sorry for rambling on.
Okay, thank you. No, not at all. Secret. Thank you very much for your comments there. And I totally agree with you that better linkage with what's happening in the international community with the UN, with the EGRM is absolutely critical for our next stage here. We need to go. Oh, okay. There's a couple of comments in the chat.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to say on the decision trees, so in the chat, so Satinder kind of reminded us that decision trees were developed independently for the extensive work that was carried out when we were developing the Mexico Petroleum Pilot Project. And those are captured in papers prepared for the Society of Petroleum Engineer events and also the Mexico Pilot Paper. And those decision trees were also used for the case study developed by Kuwait. And then Tom Bide from the British Geological Survey, hi Tom, he said that preliminary decision trees were also developed for UNFC categorization for primary mineral resources under the EU-funded Arama project. And then Joy has shared that it's fantastic to see how the original decision trees developed by Harman for geothermal have been adopted and adapted for different applications. This confirms their usability and perhaps the need to consider elevating them to overarching UNFC level with the possibility for additional context within supplementary commodity specifications. I know I'm only the Secretariat, but I fully support what Joya has just said, and we should capture that in the minutes. And then just to say, Mr. Chair, the interpreters kindly afforded us 10 more minutes, but those are just about to expire.
Yes, thank you very much to the interpreters for giving us an extra 10 minutes there, which is about to go up now. I would like to go over the conclusions and recommendations now, if we could. We can continue without interpretation for a brief time. Is that acceptable to everyone in the room and online? Okay, I don't see any objections to that, so we will go ahead and we'll complete the conclusions and recommendations. It's all going to be in print here, so hopefully it's be very understandable. I'll read off the bits that are put up online and on screen, I hope, for those of you online. First one, number 8, the expert group on resource management noted that the continuing unprecedented circumstances caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in the 13th session being held in a hybrid mode with the possibility of online and physical participation. It was also noted that the session was originally due to be held on 25-29 April 2022, but due to the geopolitical challenges in the ECE region, the session was rescheduled as a one-day meeting on 25 October. The revised annotated provisional agenda for the 13th session was adopted. It was agreed that the opening remarks would be taken under this agenda item, and an update on the activities and priorities of the Committee on Sustainable Energy and matters for consideration by the expert group on resource management would be taken under agenda item 7 under business. There's no issues with that. The expert group elected the following experts to the Bureau as vice chairs with effect from the close of the 13th session for a period of 2 years until the close of the 15th session. Ms. Branka Nechevic from Bosnia-Herzegovina, Mr. Viktor Babashev, Kazakhstan, and Mr. Jujuan, the People's Republic of China. Other members elected to the Bureau at the 12th session in 2021 will continue into the end of the 14th session. Congratulations. Item 13, the expert group was advised of changes to the Bureau since the 12th session. The European Federation of Geologists, EFG Chair, Vice Chair, Mr. Michael Neumann has stepped down and been replaced by Mr. Glenn Burridge. The African Union Commission, AUC Vice Chair, Mr. Frank Mugenyi has stepped down and been replaced by Ms. Merit Kittar. Mr. Tunde Ariskola from Nigeria has stepped down as Vice Chair. And finally, Mr. Alistair Jones has stepped down as Chair of the Technical Advisory Group and replaced by incoming co-chairs of the group, Mr. Alexander Spielman and Mr. Satinder Purwal. Outgoing Bureau members, Mr. Neumann, Mugenyi, Ariskola, and Jones were thanked for their long-standing commitment and support of the work in the expert group. The expert group noted the growing applications of the United Nations Framework Classification for Resources and the United Nations Resource Management System and their deployment in the ECE and beyond. The expert group has evolved into a rich source of expertise for sustainable resource management, which could be tapped for various initiatives, including the United Nations Working Group on Transforming the Extractive Industries for Sustainable Development. The expert group further noted the proposal of the Bureau and the co-chairs of the technical advisory to realign the group. The expert group recommended that its current structure needs to be realigned to reflect the priorities outlined in the annotated agenda, resource commercial management standards, development and deployment of UNECE and UNRS, and systems such as IT, blockchain, XBRL, et cetera, meeting inter alia the needs of all of stakeholders, including international centers of excellence on sustainable resource management that are being established. Okay. Group, yeah. The expert group requested that a formal proposal to realign the expert group be prepared by the Bureau in collaboration with the technical advisory group, including all the working group chairs and the secretariat for submission to the 14th session. The expert group noted the critical importance of sustainable resource management in responding to the emerging energy, raw material, food supply, and climate crises. Agreed that the ECE Secretariat's capacity to support and coordinate activity needs to be enhanced. The expert group noted with appreciation the decision of the Committee on Sustainable Energy to request additional resources to support activities under the Sustainable Energy Subprogram, including on modernizing resource management systems. The expert group noted with appreciation the accelerated implementation of UNFC, in particular in countries of the European Union, with a focus on application of UNFC to mineral and anthropogenic resources. The expert group further noted with appreciation the extra budgetary project funded by the European Commission supporting UNECE member states in the development and implementation of UNFC and UNRMS 20 to 2024. Implementation of which is in its third year, which has facilitated the accelerated implementation of UNFC. Noting the scale of the task to deploy UNFC in the ECE region and beyond, further develop UNRMS and build the required capacity for application of both at national level, requested the Secretariat to come in, continue its efforts to secure additional extra budgetary resources. Typo there. Okay. The expert group noted with appreciation the work of the technical advisory group to coordinate and support the activities of all the sectoral working groups of the expert group. The expert group requested the technical advisory group to consolidate the UNFC specifications into a coherent and short set of documents and submit them to the 14th session of the expert group for approval, subject to the availability of human resources to prepare the documents. The expert group further requested the technical advisory group to continue to review documents developed by the working groups and submit recommendations thereon to the Bureau between annual sessions. The expert group additionally requested the technical advisory group to develop a roadmap for UNFC related activities, including the development of systems to complement the standards and guidance notes, covering the next 5 years for review by the Bureau and subsequent submission to the 14th session of the expert group.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you could just go back. Could you just go back up? Where we were talking about the previous paragraph that was just, yeah. So the the text that's in track changes is text that's been added since the draft conclusions and recommendations were circulated. And we've heard that there's a need to consolidate all the specifications into coherent and short set of documents. And I would just welcome hearing from the TAG and the working group chairs if they think that this is realistic. We did put in, obviously this is an urgent issue and it needs to be done. And particularly if we're in the implementation phase, we did add in subject to the availability of human resources to prepare the documents. But I think, Mr. Chair, it would be interesting to hear from the TAG or from Satinder or the working group chairs if they think that this is realistic and who's willing to put their hand up to volunteer. So, thank you.
I think it's quite clear that it's going to be a challenge to achieve this. However, I believe it is something that is absolutely essential that we get done in a timely manner. So I don't think necessarily that putting the challenge out to the working groups to get this done is a bad thing.
Okay.
We can challenge them to do that. We have given them the caveat that obviously it's, if they can't do it, they can't do it. Right?
Yeah. And I guess the issue is that obviously the ideal would be to have those documents available in English, French and Russian, which puts the time pressure even more. They would have to be ready by the end of January. Which,
that's unlikely.
yeah, okay.
The expert group noted with appreciation the development of a glossary of common terms for the UNFC. The expert group approved the common glossary for use in UNFC and its subsidiary documents, including specifications, guidance, and studies. Requested the Secretariat to tag the defined terms with hyperlinks to the definitions. This includes definitions of categories, the terms defined in the common glossary, and the terms defined in any subsidiary documents. Requested the Technical Advisory Group to research the merit of developing an XBRL facility for use with UNFC and UNRMS, including in jurisdictional entity partnership and financial reporting, and report the outcomes of the 14th session of the expert group. XBRL, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's effectively it's a way of tagging information within documents so that you can then pull it out very easily for summary. It's done. Well, most notably, it's done quite extensively in the United States filings to the Security and Exchange Commission. So annual reports and things like that are all tagged, so you can go in and grab information. It's very helpful.
Can I just share?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. So Satinder, thank you for responding. Satinder responded in the chat. He said that he thinks it's an unrealistic time frame to achieve updating all the documents by 2023, perhaps 2024. So, just to share that.
The expert group noted with appreciation the updated bridging document between the national standard of the People's Republic of China classification for mineral resources and mineral reserves and UNFC, and the updated bridging document between the national standard of the People's Republic of China classification for petroleum resources reserves and UNFC, and requested that they be posted on the UNFC website. The expert group noted with appreciation the work of the, oh, we haven't done that yet. We'll hold on that. Yeah, there's the geothermal one. Yeah. Sit there. Yep. Yep, 40. The expert group noted with appreciation the updated specifications for the application of UNSC to geothermal energy developed by the UNSC Ad Hoc Committee of the International Geothermal Association and approved it to be posted online. The expert group noted the importance of further testing the classification of renewable energy projects using UNSC and agreed to facilitate case studies or pilot projects by countries in cooperation with the group of experts on renewable energy for presentation at its 14th session. Okay.
I don't know if Serge wants to take the floor. He's made a comment. Serge, you made a comment in the chat, but maybe it would be good if you could take the floor.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, my question was actually related to the one that was raised by David before on the consolidation of the UNFC documents. This consolidation and maybe also shortening of the documents, is that also impacting the definition of new specifications documents, or should we just follow the structure as we have now, for example, for geothermal?
Well, I think the goal here is to develop a set of documents that's going to be as brief as possible to present the information as that can be. It's always a complicated issue when you're starting to change a format of something. Is that there'll be other documents that are partway down the path of development using the existing framework. And while I wouldn't dream of suggesting that you throw out what you have produced so far to align with the new product. I think the goal should be to transition to the new shorter versions as quickly as possible. If that's possible in the stage of development of new tools, then that's appropriate to do that. If it doesn't make sense to do that, I think we need to be practical and have a pragmatic approach here and only move things over as appropriate with timing. I know it's a bit of a vague response, Serge, but I don't actually want to be more dogmatic than that. I'm a firm believer in being practical on these issues and you know where it can be produced appropriately. It's the right thing to do. I don't know. I'm a big fan of the American author Mark Twain, and one of my favorite comments of his is, "I apologize for the length of this document. I didn't have time to be brief." And to be brief is very time consuming, and you know, we appreciate that the issues that come with that.
Yeah, thank you, Serge, for raising that, and thank you, Chair, for your feedback, which I fully agree with. I think this is something that the technical advisory group should discuss and debate, because also, you know, we've heard that the urgency is to do deployment and implementation, but it also means that the users need quality documents, and harmonization is key as well, but not to jeopardize implementation. So I think it's a fine balance that we've got to take going forwards, and clearly the documents will be evolving. Thank you.
Okay, a couple more points here. Number 44. The expert group noted with appreciation the work of the Commercial Applications Working Group and the information provided in the document, the United Nations Framework Classification for Resources Applied to Commercial Assessments Guidance. The expert group requested that the guidance be posted to the ECE website. The expert group expressed support for the efforts of the Commercial Applications Working Group, the Bureau, and ECE to strengthen the relationship with the International Financial Reporting Standards Foundation, International Sustainability Standards Board, and other standard setters with the view to achieving common standards for resource management and sustainability financial standards. The expert group recognized that the use of common standards in this regard is a prerequisite both for the achievement of the expert group and for serving the capital allocators and successfully financing the reforms. Number 45. The expert group noted that the work on commercial applications of UNFC has revealed a need to adjust the formal definition of UNFC to include metrics that projects carry beyond sources and products, e.g. emissions, costs, revenues, energy requirements, other input factors, etc. The expert group agreed on the use of the metrics that decisions require, both in the form of scalars and as time series. The expert group noted that the request of the Committee on Sustainable Energy at its 31st session that the expert group. Oh, we haven't done that yet.
Have we discussed hydrogen?
Yeah, it was mentioned. Yeah, it was mentioned. Investigate existing classifications and specifications for hydrogen and develop where appropriate specifications for the application of UNFC and UNRMS to the hydrogen projects and production technologies. Develop pilot hydrogen resource management projects and case studies applying UNRMS principles. And I guess it's important to note here that this is work that will be done with the other expert groups through this resiliency projects. And 47, the expert group recommended that subject to volunteers and extra budgetary funds being identified, a working group be established to undertake this work. The expert group further noted that the committee at its 31st session had requested a group of experts on gas to lead the work of the sub-program related to hydrogen and to do so in close collaboration with the other group of experts. The expert group also recommended the Bureau to explore opportunities for cooperation with the group of experts on energy efficiency, as I just mentioned. Okay. The expert group noted with appreciation the work carried out under the UNECE for Europe initiative, including the development of the draft guidance for the application of UNECE for mineral and anthropogenic resources in Europe to harmonize classification and management of raw materials at EU level under the European Commission's Raw Materials Initiative. The expert group noted the revised version of the document based on comments received from the public consultation, requested that it be reposted on the website and its wider use promoted. That's it. Okay, very good. I think we're done there. So we'll conclude this this morning's session. And we'll look forward to reconvening this afternoon at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. Geneva time for those of you online to continue the afternoon's session. So thank you very much for a very interesting morning. Look forward to continuing this afternoon.